I'm Daniel. I'm a plant science environmental horticulture major, and I'm probably going to be doing a turfgrass minor, so it's required, but I also want to do.
Excellent.
I'm Chase, and I'm a sports group management, turfgrass major. Taking it because Dr. Cruz is teaching it.
Right. Of course. Tyler?
My name's Tyler Johansson, golf and sports turf management major last semester. And I was going to say I was just taking this class to hang out with Jason.
Jason already beat you that one?
Jason went from there.
Take one out.
I'm Patrick. I'm a golf and sports turf major, and I want to learn more about grass.
Excellent.
I'm Brian. I'm a sport management major. I'm minoring in turfgrass.
Sport management?
Yeah.
Excellent. And I did not catch your name. Can you introduce yourself? Edward. And
I'm Clay. I'm pre-med, and I just would rather take a 2 grade class or 3 class.
honesty's good. No, he contacted me and we were visiting after class. Yep. Yeah, we'll visit about it and see if it's a good fit. And I'd encourage you to visit with a number of the students around you. A lot of the guys have had classes in the past and you will know whether or not you have a chance of surviving. I think that you've got a chance of surviving. It's a good class. I tend to be pretty fair in how I teach and how I evaluate. Doing things a little bit different. Who all had turfgrass culture with me this past semester? So a couple, 2 or 3 of you had the opportunity to see that type of teaching experience that I had. And it was a learning experience for me, I will tell you that, with its positives and negatives both. Troy, I almost forgot to have you introduce yourself. Can you introduce yourself, Troy?
Troy McNeil, turfgrass major, undergrad.
And you're up in Milton, correct?
I never went to college, but yes, I do attend now.
Oh, you're at Pensacola?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So are you on campus today, or are you able to do this from the comfort of your house?
I am sitting on my bed.
Yeah, you're the lucky one. The syllabus I just passed out, and I will have to get that up on the Sakai website for you to see, Troy, but I'll just walk everybody through it real quick, just in terms of my expectations. After having taught the turfgrass culture last semester through strictly online, I have decided that it's important to incorporate more use of Sakai. If not for nothing, it helps me in terms of interacting with students. And I'm going to try to do more of that again this semester with some of the sort of out-of-class projects that we're going to work on. In the past, if you've spoken to anybody that took this class a couple of years ago, the last time it was taught, this was team taught by Dr. Hunter and myself. And we would have him teaching some lectures out of Milton through Polycom. I would teach some lectures here out of Gainesville. We had students in both locations. And then we had a weekend learning experience where we would load everybody up and spend a Friday evening and a good part of the day Saturday down in Orlando. And we're going to try to do something similar to that, but try to do it here in Gainesville rather than try and loading everybody up and going to Orlando. It ended up costing us out of pocket about $1,500 or $1,600 to take the class down there for a night. So by the time we put everybody up in the hotel room, had some food and snacks the Friday evening, and it's expensive. It was a good experience. We went to ESPN Wide World Sports and walked through their facility and talked to them. We went to Grand Cypress Golf Course and visited with either the assistant or super, whoever happened to be there, about their facility and their operations. If there's a group of you that are interested in going to a place like ESPN Wide World Sports and walking through that facility, we can organize that. It would be more of a day trip. It would be something that obviously would not be required, but we could pull that together because I've got the contacts down there to basically just walk in and we can show up, hopefully have somebody walk us around, show us the facility, and that is something that we can do. It's in Orlando. Yeah, it's in the Disney complex. I'd be happy to do that. It was just not feasible to try to do that as part of the class and try to cover all that expense associated with it. well, I've got it on here as the week of, I think it's a Saturday of April 6th on the calendar at the back. What I am going to try to do now, whether we do something, I'm going to finish working this out with the University Athletic Association. The 6th is going to be the Orange and Blue game. And there's a good opportunity that we can get all of us out there to help either the day or two, they paint the field the day or two, about the 2 days going up to the game. And so maybe we can have some individuals that help paint, have some people help with the field setup, but I would like to have through that week some opportunities available for you to go out and do some hands-on stuff with the Athletic Association associated with getting the field ready for the game. Some of you have helped with that during the football season. Those of you that have in the past, you know that I have 2 students that go every game, 2 to 3 students a game to help get the field ready and set up for the football games. It'll be similar to that. And what I probably will try to do is mix it up between some baseball opportunities, because they do have baseball getting wrapped up. I know that Todd Campbell would love to have some help with that if somebody wants to volunteer a little bit of time and just see what working some play is like and what he has to do to keep that taken care of.
He's in charge of the
Baseball facility, Todd Campbell is, yeah. And so I want to make those opportunities available to you. They obviously are not, so if we do something, that's related to that, the week of April 6th, I'd like to have everybody get some experience or exposure out there. And Troy, I recognize that may or may not be a possibility for you coming from Milton, and we can work with that and maybe find something that would help that for you. But we can talk about that separately, Troy, because I recognize that would be a difficult trip for you to maybe to make if that's going to be a pain, and we'll work something else out. But for those of you that are here in Gainesville, I want to try to make that a possibility. And whether we do it on Saturday, I've got to sort that out with the Athletic Association, whether we do something on Saturday or if we do something that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday leading up to it, and then work around your schedules to have you go out there and do something that week so that you get some hands-on exposure to it. We will also try to do separate but related to that, because that I intend to be a little bit more of a hands-on experience, and then we'll try to do something another time where we just go and those of you that want to join me, we'll go walk around and see the different athletic facilities, talk about what goes into managing them, and maybe talk to some of the field managers. So again, wouldn't necessarily be a formal sort of field trip, but if you are interested in doing that, we can pull that together. Just go through the facilities here on campus, see the athletic facilities, see the rec sports, talk about the differences between them, look at the wear and tear that they receive, and see that. You can also go to the University Golf Course, visit with the superintendent there, maybe go around their facility a little bit. So those are things that we'll try to incorporate as a sort of related, and some of you, John, and a number of you, have a ton of experience working on golf courses, and going to walk around another golf course may not be of interest to you. Maybe it is, just to see something else. So, it'd be more of an extracurricular sort of experience for anybody that wants to be exposed to that. The course itself, if you look at the calendar at the back, we meet once a week on Mondays. We do have a couple of classes where we're not going to meet, and we won't meet that week. The 21st, which is coming up in 2 weeks, we won't meet because of Martin Luther King. The week of February 4th, I will be actually on my way, hopefully in San Diego by the time class will be taught. But I'll be on my way to San Diego for the Golf Industry Show, and we'll be lecturing there and helping with a couple things. So we won't have class that week. And then, of course, spring break. The rest of it, lectures on Monday, and I'm going to, rather than having exams as part of the class and doing a midterm and a final, I did enjoy, I felt it was a good thing to have the weekly quizzes like I had, those of you that took turf culture with me this past semester, a weekly quiz that's offered through Sakai, and basically every week there'll be a quiz, and that will make up, as you can see, 50% of your grade. And then the remainder of your grade will come from your participation both in class and online on the course website, helping with that and being involved in that weekend learning experience on the week of April 6th. And then for the, do we have any grad students in here at the moment? I don't. You're a grad student? Okay. And I need to get there's a I need to change which section you're in. If you got an email from Amy about that. Yeah, I did. Okay. We'll get a grad section, get you into a grad section. You'll have something similar to the second syllabus. For the undergraduates in the class to do is we're going to walk you through sort of a hands-on experience and not make it individual. I'm going to team you up in groups of probably 2 or 3 so that you can work together on going through a soil analysis and then interpret that soil analysis and how it would impact the management of turf in that system. And then in relationship to that, a plant or a soil tissue, a plant tissue test that would tell you the nutrients that are in the plant and get you to think that, you know, in a case like that, that's not a situation where there's a right or wrong. What I'm hoping that you'll do is you'll get to thinking more about what you've learned maybe in a physiology class or a botany class or a biology class and how that relates to managing a system here and thinking about the soil type that you have, how's that going to impact nutrient availability, nutrient uptake. So it's meant to be more of an exercise really to pull the pieces together and see what you can come up with as a plan for managing turfgrass on a given site. And then the undergraduate students will have probably, I've got to finalize what I'm thinking, but probably 2 or 3 journal articles that will be related to managing turfgrass systems in golf or athletic field type situations that I'll assign to you to read and then come back and basically critique, talk about how it impacts the management of turf. Is, you know, what were the authors of the research intending to prove or disprove, and interpret it basically from the standpoint of how does this impact the end user? How does this impact the golf course superintendent, the athletic field manager, and their ability to do their job? Because that's ultimately what you're going to have to do when you get out of here and go out into your career path, whatever it is. You're going to be faced with interpreting information that you receive, whether you seek it out or if it lands on your desk by somebody else putting it there. You need to be able to think critically about what it is that you read, how it either does or does not impact you, and whether or not it's something you should pay attention to. And so hopefully just be another step in you thinking about that, and we can talk about it in a really a non-confrontational manner. You're not going to lose a job over it, and as long as you participate and do the work, you're not going to lose points. This is really a situation you do the work, you're going to get credit for it. I'm not really looking for right or wrong or criticizing. Even if you come in with a little bit less experience, hopefully we'll team you up with somebody who has more experience, and you'll learn from this. I really do think so. For the graduate students, and there's one other graduate student I know that's in it, I'm going to have work with you on writing an EDIS article. You're probably familiar with the EDIS publication system, and we'll work together to pull together an EDIS article. And those of you, is everybody familiar with EDIS? It's an electronic document information system or something like that. But it's essentially a clearinghouse for information coming out of the University of Florida's faculty and researchers, grad students included, where we take information that we've gathered in research projects that we might publish in crop science or agronomy journal in a real technical format, and we rewrite it in a way to serve the needs of the end user. So we'll take what you guys are going to do with that journal article and rewrite something to basically make it suitable for one of you to pick up and be able to say, okay, if I have gray leaf spot on my turfgrass, what do I need to do to manage it? And it'll walk you through the steps of identifying the pest or the disease, cultural management options, chemical management options, things to look for, and it'll just be a short 2 or 3 page article that you can easily reproduce and share and print and whatever else. And so for the grad students, we'll have them work on writing one of those and hopefully get it published. which would be beneficial to you for later on. Questions about anything so far relative to what you see on the syllabus or anything like that? And again, Troy, I apologize that you don't have a copy of the syllabus. I will get one to you. And if you have questions, I'll answer them for you then. Quaker, you snuck in late. Quaker, do you want to introduce yourself real quick, just your name, your major, and why you're taking the class? And it's not, you can't answer because I'm teaching it or because it's required.
My name is Kwaku Dotsie. My major is golf and sports turf management, which I'm really not used to saying, so I usually just say sports turf. And the reason why I'm here, other than the reasons that he listed, I like athletic fields.
All right, fair enough. Quaku just is wrapping up an internship with the Jaguars and has been working with them through the second half of the summer and then through most of the fall semester. And you said you've got 2 or 3 more events that you're going to help them with, right?
Yeah.
And then those of you that know or have possibly met Natasha
It was like
Rastuccia.
Rosemary Girl that
Yeah.
came on top of us.
Yeah. Natasha Rastuccia is a master's student working with me. She was one of my first graduates of the undergraduate program when I came into UF. She interned with the Jaguars also and ended up working with them as an assistant field manager for about 2.5 years. And so if you haven't had an internship experience, please be thinking about picking a good one, because when you pick a good one, sometimes it can lead to a job. And that's something that is very helpful. No questions? Anything? All right. Troy, you're going to see things change a little here. Troy, are you able to see the title slide of that?
Yes.
Excellent. No need to take notes on this today. This is more of a background information sort of lecture. Actually, the class itself, part of managing golf and athletic fields is understanding the game and did I give it to you? Oh, not enough. Understanding the game and understand some of the history. How many of you are avid golfers?
What's the definition of
Well, so I'm on one end of the
I like to
spectrum.
golf, but isn't that
My,
good?
my end of the spectrum is that I have golf clubs. When somebody asks me if I golf, I just reply that I own golf clubs, because technically I own golf clubs. I take them out about once a year. That's about it. And I hope, I pray that when I take them out, it's a scramble, because if it's if I'm playing my own ball, you know, there could be half a dozen foursomes that maybe pass me in front of when I get through the 18 holes. Not seriously, I just get to pick up the ball. So we got a few that are avid golfers, and then athletes are enjoying playing sports. I know Quaku's a pretty avid soccer and football fan. How about the rest of you? Maybe the rest of you enjoy it? Yeah, and you know that these sports are rooted deeply in history. And we'll talk a little bit about that, because it helps better understand when we talk about managing golf courses, for instance. You hear about link-style golf courses, or you might go out and play a par 3, and you'll see differences in how they're designed. I'm waiting to hear back. I'm hoping that we'll have a guest lecture. I've not been able to get in confirmed with him, with Jim Moore. Jim Moore is with the USGA. He's going to hopefully be able to join us and talk about greens construction, and he talks a lot about the history of greens construction and why, you know, where we started in, you know, ancient history really, with just these really closely cut, or actually, you know, they had livestock out there grazing the areas, and they had basically a target that they were shooting at. But he walks you through the steps of getting to where we are today in our greens construction recommendations, where we have these constructed root zones with subsurface drainage, very particular particle size, and the organic matter. And he just steps us through that process of why that's important and how different changes that can impact how you're able to manage a putting green. I do have And then the other guest lecturer, if you noticed on there, is Dr. Unruh, who will be joining us for 2 lectures later this semester. One of them he'll be teaching through Polycom, and has everybody in here had the benefit of taking a class through Polycom? Let's hope that for that one lecture that it behaves for us, because it can be really frustrating. Troy, that's part of the reason I'm trying to find an alternative for you guys that are off campus, is that I get very frustrated when Polycom does not work, and I know that that can be frustrating for everybody here, both in Gainesville and at the off-campus locations. When it doesn't work, it just becomes very, very tiresome. So we'll see, but he'll give us he'll be offering one lecture, giving us one lecture out of Milton, and we'll have that through Dr. Unruh. And then Dr. Unruh will be teaching one from Milton, and then the following week, he'll actually be able to join us, I think, here in Gainesville, so you'll get to have him in the classroom and interact with him and ask him questions if you want to. And I think that'll be something that you really enjoy. He really is passionate about teaching and enjoys teaching this class, but the reality of it from his standpoint was that up in Milton, there's not as many students as there was, and he spent an awful lot of time doing research and did not have a research appointment. And so we swapped some things around, and now I'm doing most of the pollen teaching, and he's doing a little more research up there. But he still wants to be involved and wants to help students. Troy, have you had a chance to meet Dr. Unruh?
Yeah, I have a took photo with him.
Okay, good. And I would encourage you to make use of him as a resource as you're finishing up your degree program, because he is a really well-connected person in the state. Those of you that are here on campus, if you haven't met him yet, when he comes to talk, if you are looking to get an internship or get a job in the industry, he's another really good contact to have, because he's one of the primary extension specialists. And when I was talking to him about guest lecturing this semester, he's going to be out of town about 6 weeks over this semester, traveling the state and either speaking or helping people or doing other stuff. So he's on the road an awful lot. Let's see if I can get. So you guys can see the slide. So, first lecture that we're going to talk about is just golf, and this is not going. We'll be out of here pretty reasonably today. If you're worried about stuff throughout the semester, most of the time this class doesn't go the entire 2 hours, or hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, generally speaking. So, if you need to leave early, I know Kwaku, he's going to have to step out here in about half hour or a little less for a class, and so if you have a conflict, let me know, and we'll work around that. Or if you just need to leave someday because you're tired of listening to me, don't tell me that you're tired of listening. You just get up and leave. No, just pretend that you have something important to do. The game of golf has a history that's really tough to really nail down, but there's been a lot of, it's a very popular sport, and the closest that they've been able to come to is that it was suggested that the Romans brought the idea to Europe. Some think that the game started earlier than that. There's a lot of different sort of ball and stick type games that have been identified throughout history, and you look at the terminology of it. The word golf itself is derived from a Dutch word, and then that's related to a German word, and ultimately it has some links to Danish language. The rules that we have in the game of golf, and there was a number of you that raised your hand, to play the ball where it lies. How many of you are familiar with that rule? So what's the significance of play the ball where it lies? Yeah, I mean, it could be lying anywhere, right? And part of the game relies on your skill to be able to place the ball, right? And you hopefully will place the ball in a situation that's going to make it easy for you to get the next shot. If you happen to place it out in the rough or under the trees or wherever that might be, that too bad for you. You still have to play it from where it's at rather than doing the foot wedge and getting out to a little bit clear area.
It just depends on how many people are watching.
Well, and if you're far enough behind the foursome, nobody really notices.
Exactly.
So the so, but that has hit that rule. It's one of those rules that has been part of the game since its early origins. The country of Scotland and St. Andrews, golf course St. Andrews, the old course. Often people think about that as being one of the primary origins of the game of golf. How many of you have heard of the old course? How many are familiar with the sort of controversies surrounding the old course right now? Anybody?
Is it the fence?
Well, I don't know if the fence is part of it, but they're renovating the course and doing some changes to the course and coming in and, I mean, golf courses here in the States often will be built and then rebuilt or modified. They'll change the location. I mean, Augusta National is a great example where, you know, the tees will be in one location one year, then another location the year after, and they'll change the whole course and how it plays, or the length of the course and how it plays. St. Andrews has been one of these courses that's been sort of sacred in the sense that it's been left relatively untouched and has sort of resembled its original design throughout history. And now they're going in and working on renovating it and updating it. My understanding is the goal is to update it so that it better resembles what the game of golf is today and how the athletes play the game today. And it's, for a while anyways, was really irritating to people who felt that it should be left alone. And, you know, that it's this historic kind of piece of the golf game that,
What made it play so old?
if I were to guess, more than anything is probably the length of the course.
I think all the par fives were easily reachable to professionals. So.
Yeah, the length of the course. And that's going to be the length of the course. And we'll talk about it a little bit later in this lecture, but how long the course plays is really one of the driving forces in terms of how difficult the course is and how people are going to play. Go out to West End and play out there, and you know, that's, for most of you, probably a pretty easy course to play.
Kind of put.
Except for trying to putt?
No, just stand
No.
up.
But you know, that is what's going to, you know, take a par five and either make it, you know, easily achievable and maybe where you can get, you know, R's or less on a regular basis, or make it something that's very difficult and challenging so that the scores are closer to what they would hope them to be. St. Andrews was an ancient city that was present during medieval times. It's located on basically a cliff-protected peninsula. If you've seen pictures of it, it's absolutely stunning. They do have internships for those of you that are interested. We haven't had a student from the University of Florida intern there. But when I was at Iowa State University, we had students pretty much every year that interned, or every other year that interned at St. Andrews. And how many of you seen pictures of the cliffs that are lining the edge of the fairways? Nick Christians, who was my major professor up there at Iowa State, and the advisor for the turf students, went and visited one of the students one year, and he said the eeriest thing about it was that in the morning when they go out to mow fairways and greens, the whole entire peninsula would be engulfed in fog. And
Try to mower off the side of it.
he said that your visibility was so close or so short that it was really kind of freaky to think that, you know, where is the edge, because you couldn't see it until you were basically right on the edge of the cliff. And you have to be comfortable with knowing where you're at and really pay attention, I guess. During the 15th and 16th centuries, people continued to play more and more golf. In history, there's some indication that they were devoting so much time to the game of golf that they started to neglect some of their archery skills. Now, this is during a time before firearms, and the people, the community, was expected to protect themselves through being talented archers and being able, you know, in a time of need, if they're under attack, being able to serve in that fashion. And because of the military implications where they were becoming less skilled as archers, in 1457, James II of Scotland decreed that the game of golf should not be played. And then in 1471 and 1491, it was raised again. It did thrive, and in fact, one of these kings was an avid golfer. And of course, you know, it's a recreational sport. People enjoy it. I'm sure, you know, for just like people enjoy archery, but it's something that people enjoy doing and spending their time with. It's, the first advance in the game of golf came in 1618 with the invention of the feather ball called the feathery. And essentially what they took was these feathers that were tightly packed inside of a shell. And what that allowed them to do was create a ball that would fly much further in distance than the wooden ones that they had in the past. It's very expensive, or was very expensive to create, and it's a feather-filled leather ball. And the challenge with it, though, was that it lost its shape and flight capabilities very quickly. Now, if you think about, if you've taken a physics class, you know, part of what makes anything fly uniformly through the air is making sure that it's uniform in shape. Now, if it starts to become, you know, anything less than a circle or a round sphere, then it's going to change its trajectory and it'll start to tumble. And as it starts to tumble, it's going to lose velocity much more quickly. So they lost its shape relatively quickly, and as a result, they would have to be replaced. And because they were expensive, that made that not a good long-term solution. They were still used for about 225 years. Next major,
You know how far they go?
I don't. I would imagine that, you know, that they were 100 yards, maybe. Maybe, I'm not sure. 1845 was the next time that an advancement was made, and they created it, or basically packed in a material called gutta percha. And this packing material, golfers fashioned a ball that they thought might be used for golf instead of the feathery. And then, though it was quite unpopular, the two golfers kept making it and basically persisted in marketing. The strength of marketing and telling people that it was a better product. It became very popular, and it was actually used up until the early 1900s when the rubber cord ball came into the picture, and that rubber cord then took over. In 1913, one of the greatest golfers in the United States Open, you know, the story of the greatest game ever played, that movie was written about Francis Ouimet and the Country Club of Brookline, Massachusetts. And that event propelled golf, the story of that and the media propelled golf from a relative position of security to something that really appealed to the masses within North America. The old course in St. Andrews, which we talked a little bit about earlier, it was owned by the citizens of the town and everyone was welcome to play. No one was actually charged to play there until 1913. The golf course was rebuilt and enlarged in 1832, and they turned in, you know, created the famous double greens that people know or are aware of today. And by the end of, that relatively, since then, the course has been relatively unchanged. So it's part of why, you know, there was updates and changes that are being made, they're trying to be made to it. In the 1700s, the term greenkeeper as a term referring to people who took care of golf courses was used. Very few golf course superintendents anymore would like to or even prefer to be referred to as a greenkeeper for a number of reasons, but the original term was greenkeeper, not greenskeeper. It referred to the whole golf course, not just the putting greens. Most often that term now for people in the industry is viewed or kind of received relatively with a negative connection for whatever reason. But, you know, at this point, if you're a superintendent or a golf director of golf, often that's the preferred term that people like to be referred to or kind of used as their title, and not greenkeeper. First greenkeeper on record was Alexander Monroe. In the early days, the golf professionals frequently became greenkeepers. Old Tom Morris was a four-time winner of the British Open, became a greenkeeper of St. Andrews in 1865, and remained there until 1904. He had 2 rules of turf maintenance for his program. One of them was this year that I'm not even going to try to say, but was his cry for his assistant, Honeyman, to apply more top dressing or sharp sand to the tees and fairways. He said it was needed to maintain the character of the grass. And this is back in the late 1800s. And he was already recognizing the importance of top dressing the greens with sand. Now, we maintain that practice today, right? Depending on the type of turf that you're dealing with, whether it's an ultra dwarf or something like tip dwarf, top dressing is sometimes put out maybe even weekly in some cases. You know, some of the ultra dwarfs management practices that we've come up with recommend really, really light, frequent applications of top dressing sand. Why is it that we put top dressing sand on our putting greens? Not only our putting greens, but putting greens primarily.
Breaks down thatch.
Patrick says it breaks down thatch. Why does sand by itself break down thatch? There's actually a couple things going on, right? So if we look at, everybody know what we're talking about when we talk about thatch? If you look at a turf grass system as it grows, particularly with our warm season grasses, and then more specifically when you look at the grasses that are both stoloniferous and rhizomatous, or a combination thereof, that grow laterally. If we leave them untouched, those lateral stems start to stack on top of each other. And we get this layer of organic matter that builds up above the original soil layer. And that, over time, then starts to break down, and you get this intermingled layer of living and dead organic matter that we refer to as thatch. Now, if you walk across an area that's got a lot of thick thatch, it's going to feel real spongy under your feet. It's going to feel real soft. Even a putting green that can be mowed at like an eighth of an inch, you can step into it and maybe leave a half inch, or quarter and a half inch depth foot impression in it because it's so spongy. Now that sponginess is not good for the game of golf. It's not good for management because if you're mowing something that's that spongy, you can get a lot of scalping. When we top dress with sand, what we're doing is a couple of different things actually. One of them, the ultimate goal is to get rid of the thatch, but it's working by diluting the thatch, diluting that organic matter. So instead of just being straight organic matter in a big stack right there, now it's a mix of organic matter and mineral content, right? So it gives it some structure that when you step on it, if you've been doing this regularly, it's not going to squash out and be as spongy as it would have been otherwise. The other thing the sand does when we top dress is that it improves that environment for microbial activity. So it'll hold water a little bit more consistently. It's going to help support that micropopulation. And ultimately, it's the microbes that are there that are responsible for breaking down that organic matter and getting it incorporated back into the system. So our whole entire goal when we talk about managing golf course systems or athletic fields or residential lawns for that matter, the whole entire purpose really is to improve the environment in that soil and thatch profile for microbial activity so that it will more quickly break down that organic matter and recycle that back into the system so that we don't have an accumulation of thatch. The second thing that he always said that in some cases is still held up today was that basically that they would not play golf on Sundays. The course would be closed on Sundays. And his purpose for that was to make sure that the course had a day of rest, which, there's an athletic facility that can benefit from that, but that it had a day of rest and that you could come in and have an opportunity when you're managing that facility to do things that need to be done for the maintenance and upkeep of that golf course. And that was something that Tom Morris felt was really important in terms of being able to maintain the quality of golf course that he wanted to. Now this is a little bit different than the type of mowing that we do today, right? They actually have scythes. Have any of you ever had the opportunity to use a scythe before? My grandfather, who he passed away in, I guess, 2007, so he's been a couple of years now. But his farm, I worked with him growing up on the farm, and he had some old scythes that he had in the shop that he would use for clearing grass out from underneath the electric fences where we keep livestock in around pastures. And it's, you know, the modern day equivalent is basically a weed eater, really. Except for you've got this horizontal blade that is actually mounted right down here at the end of this wooden handle. And all you did is just walk along and just swing it back and forth like this, and it would just literally cut the grass off. And it works surprisingly well, other than it's not quite as easy to do as a weed eater when it comes to trying to do quarter or half mile fence. But back then, that's what they had, you know, their best alternative for mowing. Other things that they had for mowing, of course, were livestock, and then, you know, for clearing up or cleaning up areas, a lot of hand labor compared to what we have today. As time advanced, we went away from size and livestock for maintaining golf course facilities and maintaining mowed areas, to using some of the early rotary or reel mowers, which you can see kind of depicted graphically here. Often pulled with horses, and in the case of the larger mowers, they had special hooves that they put on them to try to minimize the damage to the field. The first patented hole cutter was developed by Charles Anderson in 1869 and given to Tom Morris. It hasn't changed much.
Yeah,
It
that's
hasn't.
a whole lot different.
There are certain parts of this managing turfgrass system that haven't changed in years. The core air fire, as an example. I think we'll talk about it here in a little bit, or at least when we get into the management practices lecture later this semester. Some of the early core air fires, you still see basically the same thing, except for fresher paint and maybe better bearings and a little different scale available today as what was originally designed. Some of the pull behind drum type air fires that you might pull behind a tractor, that you might buy from Sears to use on your home lawn, those are still on the market today, and they're used in some cases for large athletic field complexes and stuff where they want to get across an area very quickly and not have to spend a lot of time or effort doing so. Obviously, there's better ways of going about it with some of the deep tine air fires and some of the better equipment, but a lot of that equipment has a lot slower process of going across the site. Earliest reference to golf in North America happened in Charleston, South Carolina in 1788, and it referred to the formation of a golf club that occurred in 1786. The oldest continuously operated golf course in North America is the Royal Montreal Golf Club in Quebec that started in 1873. The first one in the United States was the St. Andrews Golf Club in Yonkers, New York in 1888. By 1995, there are at least 75 clubs in the United States. The USGA, as an organization, was formed in 1894, and there were 5 founding clubs. So it started really small in the late 1800s in the United States. What is your guesstimate, or do you guys have, somebody have an idea of how many golf courses there are in the state of Florida right now? Roughly.
4,000.
Now, it gets closer to, well, within the last couple of years, the number was closer to around 1,300. And within the last couple of years, that number has shrunken back a little bit. There have been several courses that have closed because of the economic conditions. This was at Turkey Creek, whatever, that's up here north of Gainesville's a prime example of one that was closed down when the economy started to go bad. Interestingly, from a research perspective, closed golf courses create, or have created, a little bit of concern from an environmental standpoint. Any idea why? Particularly up north, there was a little bit of concern about the golf courses closing down and the impact that might have on the environment. It wasn't the pesticides and herbicides that were the concern so much as the thought or possibility that these grasses that were maintained there, now up north it's creeping bent grass and Kentucky bluegrass primarily, that they would become invasive. And so there was this concern within some of the environmental groups that as these golf courses close down and now nobody's watching what happens, that these evil grasses were going to take over and start swallowing trees and things like that. And so one of my colleagues out there, John Steyer, and a couple other people went out in Wisconsin, was where they did this work, but they went out and surveyed some courses that have been closed for a number of years. And they were able to take the topographic maps of the old surveys of the golf course and locate the old greens, and locate the tees and fairways. And then they did cross-sectional surveys of those locations and looked for plant material that would have been there, like European bentgrass or Kentucky bluegrass or whatever the case might be. And ultimately what they found is that as that ecosystem developed and transitioned from being a golf course to, that if you've taken an ecology class, you get this sort of shift in the plant population from the grasses to shrubs and ultimately trees, and then you get understory trees and then larger trees. But that transition was happening, and the grasses had absolutely no impact on it. And as the courses have been closed longer periods of time, they found very few, if any, of the grasses there. Now, why would that be? They're perennial grasses, right? They should survive the winter. They should survive year-round. Why would the grasses start to basically disappear from that environment?
Because they're so used to being maintained everywhere.
That's part of it. But think about your physiology classes.
The natural environment.
And they can't compete. They need sun. And most of them prefer full sun conditions. They almost have to have full sun conditions to survive. And there was no way for them to compete when that change started to happen. They basically were just swallowed up, and there was no competitive advantage. So that ended up not being as big of a concern as some thought it was going to be for a little while. The interest in the Greenkeeper organization developed in the United States during the 1920s. It is a very active organization at this point, and the USGA actually serves a number of purposes. Now, what are you familiar with, possibly most familiar with the USGA, the United States Golf Association?
US Open.
US Open, and then more importantly and more specifically tied to the game of golf. Well, they're the rules organization for the game of golf, at least within the United States. They maintain and everything from equipment that comes on, it has to be approved by the USGA. Nike or TaylorMade or anybody comes out with a new golf driver, it has to meet their standards. They're basically the authority on the rules for the game of golf. For those of you that are interested in being superintendents or directors of golf at some point, what else does the USGA offer? What's that? Green section, and more specifically, related to the green section? The turf agronomists. The USGA has a team of agronomists. There's two of them in the state of Florida, Tom Bowe and John Floyd, and then there's regionally agronomists scattered across the country that a golf course can have them come on site and take a look at their facility, offer suggestions on improvement. I don't know, I've not been with them on a site visit. I think you had the chance last year, right? What was their site visit like?
It was pretty neat. We went, I don't remember how many days, we did about 8 different golf courses. And I mean, each one's a little bit different depending on the situation of the superintendent. Mostly, they would tour the facility of the golf course. Some of them, they made multiple visits before and following up with things that had been done, checking progress. Others, there was one in particular that was kind of like an emergency call. The superintendent was somewhat frustrated or baffled with what was going on, and called. They came out that morning. We happened to be in the area. Went and talked about some of the problems that we're having with their greens. So it's a lot of kind of outside opinion on what's happening on the golf course, kind of unbiased.
Yeah, it's usually viewed as basically a third-party opinion and they'll get a report back from it. It's not a cheap service to have. They can either pay, I believe, for a subscription sort of basis or a per visit sort of basis. And I think their per visit price, last I knew, half-a-day visit was around $1,200 or something like that. So it's not a cheap thing for them to do, but those agronomists actually work closely with the researchers at the different universities across the country. They help support and coordinate research projects, all in an effort to make sure that the golf industry is able to succeed and that the superintendents are able to do their job. And their role is primarily to support and make sure that the superintendents can do what they need to do on the golf course. So there's been an interesting transition over time with the rules and recommendations for maintaining golf courses. So this is from 1916. If you've got crabgrass, you're supposed to pluck it out now. Is that a bad recommendation now? Actually, I've heard some very successful golf course superintendents that have had policies where, with things like crabgrass, their crew, and some of you guys have the pleasure, I'm sure, you view it as a pleasure of working on one of the crews. You're out on the golf course all day long, right? And they would send the crew out with a 5-gallon bucket each. And the intent being that you came back at the end of the day with like half that bucket full of weeds. Now, where you got the weeds didn't really matter so much as long as it came off the course somewhere. Because that extra set of hands out there doing manual control can save you a significant amount of time and effort and money in pesticide applications if you can avoid having to do a pesticide application. And so it's a really good way to do maintenance and weed control, particularly on things like crabgrass, because crabgrass, it's a summer annual, it's a warm season annual grass, so it's not a perennial. It grows mostly in a clump type form, so if you catch it early, all you really need to do is take a knife or something and just basically pull it out of the ground. Because if you pull it out of the ground, it's done. Once you take the intrameristem away from that plant, it's not going to grow more. Now, the seeds might germinate there in the area, they may grow more, but once you kill that or take that plant out, it's done. So it's a good candidate for manual control. The clover cutting out, dandelion, injecting gasoline into the crowd, probably not a good idea anymore.
Why would I think about doing one and pull it out?
Well, how many of you have had an opportunity to try to control dandelions in the past? Yeah, dandelions are mostly a northern climate weed. And they're taproot. Yes, that's a fun thing for kids.
Nice pastime of my childhood.
But they're a taprooted plant, and if you try to remove it by pulling it out, and you break it off, that taproot's basically like the rhizome of a warm season grass. It'll grow new plants. So if you go to try to pull it out manually, all you're going to do is just create more dandelions. And so that's part of the challenge. They're trying to kill the plant entirely by, chemically removing it that way with gasoline. Obviously, we've got better options now with some of our selective broadleaf products. Moles, trapping with a harpoon trap. You've got a better idea for controlling moles now than what they had in 1916.
Oh, really?
You'll be a millionaire, guaranteed. I sat in on a lecture when I was up in Iowa for this specialist that was talking about controlling moles on the golf course. I kid you not, the room had 150, 200 people in it. This was a very popular topic about controlling moles. And all he talked about was using these harpoon traps and how to best determine where to place them. There was nothing new about it. It was just more trying to figure out how best to judge whether that was a good tunnel to try to put it in or a bad tunnel to put it in. Now, I did see something interesting when I was in Wisconsin that was probably not really good for moles, but it was marketed more for ground squirrels. I think I've got a video maybe that I can share with you.
You mean like gophers?
Gophers, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a ground squirrel.
Ground squirrel, gophers. They get them out of these big networks of tunnels underneath.
Bird dogs.
They had this product, and I think they still market it. It was called the Roadnator, and it injected a mixture of acetylene and oxygen down into the tunnel. Now, are any of you welders?
I was going to say oxygen.
Yeah, acetylene and oxygen. If you want to have some fun, just take a little bit of oxygen and acetylene, mix it in the balloon, and touch a match to it. Don't do it. It's highly explosive. So what they have this thing this wand that they would inject this gas down the tunnel for a period of time, and lit a spark to it, and you would see the shape of the tunnel. And it was killing these guys through concussion. Just the concussion of that explosion in their tunnel was what was being used to kill the prairie dogs in that case. But similarly, if you want to have some fun, you know, it didn't happen in my generation, it was my mom's generation. A friend of ours in the shop class in high school took the same acetylene and oxygen mix, put it in a balloon, and you put the balloon far enough away from you that you can just reach it with a stick and a match on the end of it, blew all the windows out of the shop. It is the loudest explosion that you can have on the balloon, I guarantee it. So if you want to have some fun, just don't tell them I told you how to do it.
Your PPE.
Your PPE is important, that's right. Golf course operations, there's a measurement and rating system that's in place for each of the golf courses or evaluating golf courses. How many are familiar with the measurement and rating systems for golf courses? John, what can you tell us about it?
Well, I just know that just based on how hard the course is, you get a higher number.
Yeah.
Like when I was at Whirlwood, I think the time there was like 156. That's like at the top end of the rating scale.
Was it the Hammock, what was the other course?
The Rolling Oaks.
Rolling
I think that
Oaks,
was
yeah, Rolling Oaks.
156.
Yeah. Pine Barrens, I've lost plenty of golf courses. The Worldwoods is about the one place I take my golf clubs out of here because they have a tournament there that supports some of our operations here. But the golf courses are measured and rated, and this is really important for being able to evaluate, as John mentioned, how hard a golf course is going to be to play.
What's the scale though? Like,
The scale, so you've got a minimum par rating, or par rating minimum of 3, and the yardage maximum and minimum would be, you know, for par rating of 3, if you're playing from the men's tees, would be up to 250 yards based on this. And I don't know if this has been updated recently, but
and does like the whole course itself get a rating?
yes, the whole course gets, so that
There's two
each of these
ratings.
gets pulled together. So if you've got a par 3 and a low yardage, then that's going to
That's
receive a
gonna be
lower
easy,
scale.
right.
Then if you had a par 3 that was
It's
near the
250,
maximum,
yeah.
and then a par 4 that was near the maximum, par 5 near the maximum. So it's a combination of that, the yardage of
Does
the
it take
holes,
into play width at all?
and then they're measured both horizontally and in the length to determine basically what the course is like. So you can see they take measurements of the size of the green, how big the green is, how long the hole plays, and all of that comes into determining what the score is for that golf course. You can see there's a yardage to the front of the green, the back of the green, and then the length of the fairways. They take these separate measurements and permanent yardage markers are installed based on that. The way the golf course is laid out, of course, varies drastically from one course to the next. You can see a course like this, where you've got the tees and then some of these bearing areas around them. You've got different sorts of ways of playing the ball based on tee placement and some of the hazards. And that goes into determining the score. So you can see if you're playing from the championship tee, and the contrast is bad on that, but that's a lake that you're playing across, versus the reds, whites, or kind of the blues, where you essentially not have to play across the water. And you know that hazard impacts how that game is played, and you know, it really forces you, if you're playing from the championship tees in this case, you know, you've got very little room for error to maximize your score there. Because if you're off to the right, you're in the trees, and if you're way off to the left, you might still be on the fairway, but what have you essentially done? You're playing a longer golf game, right? Because it's going to be a longer shot to the green. So that's how, you know, a number of different things go into it, but that's basically what they're taking into consideration when they're rating a course. You know, from this one, oops, if you go back, hole like this, where you've got the tees all in a straight line, and the green is straight out there, that one, from the standpoint of hazards, probably isn't as bad, but it is a pretty narrow hole, and that can get into play there, because you don't have a lot of room set aside to play the ball there. Looking at the different types of course operations, there's several different types, and all of them have different structures. Each of you probably that have worked in a golf course have experienced different types of structures internally to a golf course. In 1996, when they did a survey of the industry, about 15% of the golf courses in the industry were daily feet. Basically, if you think about something, publicly owned municipal golf course, is often where you see a daily feet course. Municipal, or similar to daily feet, the municipal one's 35%, resort 10%, military 5%, management companies, and then member equity. So these are different, basically different membership structures for them, or management structures for them, and how they split out. Daily fee clubs can be owned by individuals or partnerships, and they're operated as a business venture. They often, in many cases, will also involve some land investments, where basically you've got homes that are built on the site, and part of their income for building that course, in addition to the daily fees that they get from it, are the homes that are built, the land that's sold, and then often, some membership fees or sort of a homeowners association that comes as part of being on that, living on that golf course. Municipal clubs are operated by an agency such as the state. Chief goal with that is to provide golf at an affordable price. Now, how many of you are familiar with the Ironwood Golf Course here in Gainesville and the renovations that went on there? So they put, what was it, $2 or $3 million in renovations into the golf course? And then
someone went over there and analyzed it right after that, right?
I don't know, did they get?
Yeah, there was well, not huge, but they were some green.
So they put all this money in, the city back to the renovations of the golf course, and that was about 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And now, here within the last couple months, the city's looking at trying to get out of the golf course. There was an article in the Gainesville Sun that they basically, they thought that you build it, they'll come. But if you look at the city of Gainesville, how big is golf in Gainesville or Central Florida? If you look at the golf that's available here, and you compare it to Orlando, Naples, other parts of the state, what's the big difference?
Swampy.
Well, from a player standpoint, where you're going to get your players, what's the big difference?
Or college students.
Here you've got your residents, the people who live here, who come to or go to school here.
Professors or college
Yeah,
students.
and we don't have that tourism draw. We just don't have, even if you've got the nicest course, you're not going to draw tourists in to play, and that's different than a lot of the other parts of the state. You go up in the Panhandle, Panhandle of the state, there's a lot of beautiful golf courses up there. They're able to draw tourists in. You go south of the state, there's a lot of golf courses that can draw tourism. You go even over to St. Augustine and Jacksonville, and there's a lot of tourism. But Gainesville itself, the golf courses that are here are going to survive based on the population that is resident here. And so to think that they're going to do these renovations and see a huge increase in the number of people playing the game, I'd say that was probably a little bit of a dream.
Well, it's kind of out of the way.
It
So
is.
It's not exactly the best location for the majority of the population.
If you're going to the
Well,
airport.
if you live on the east side of town, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But if you live on the west side of town, it's another country.
Well, West End is the only golf course in Gainesville ever post profit. All Hale, Gainesville Country Club, they all either just break even or
Or just.
I was West End just because everybody, all the college students go out there and just fart around.
Well,
and
well, West End
Look
only
at
has
the-
like a $300,000
Doesn't it say
budget.
the budget?
It's zero budget.
Yeah, it's not. They
Zero
have three
budget, they've got
guys working the
long
same
hours, because they run into the night, and then you've got essentially a no pressure situation.
Is it expensive for them to use those lights though?
I can't imagine if you're able to keep the golf course full, it's probably relatively speaking not that
Does
expensive.
that make sense?
You use high pressure sodium lights and they're pretty efficient. But you can basically go out there and not feel, if you're gonna hail, and I've not played at hail, probably be kicked off course if I try to play it yet. But you know, you go to a higher end golf course, and there comes with that pressure of what you should be able to do, or how you should play the game, or the rules that you're going to be expected to follow. You go to West End, and they'll let you play in your jean cutoffs and your wife beaters if you want to. I don't think they'd care. So that takes a lot of the pressure off of people playing there. It's close to most, you know, if there's people in Gainesville that have disposable income, they're on the west side of town. You know, they're in town of Tioga, they're out in Jonesville, you might even live as far out as Newberry. But the people who have disposable income in this area typically live on the west side of town. And West End's a close golf course for them. The other option would be Meadowbrook. And Meadowbrook is,
You know,
Hey, I've worked there. It's a nice establishment.
entirely went from working at Meadowbrook to a cemetery, so that tells you something.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it was a
That
better
was
job at
step
the
up.
cemetery, right?
Yes, sir.
well,
That's
they-
right.
you know,
I will tell you, that was probably where I've learned, well, maybe not now, but I learned a lot there more than a lot of other golf courses, because there was a lot of problems and I had to fix them all.
At Meadowbrook?
Yeah.
So you told me that's where you were, like.
The private clubs and a lot of the resort
Here, go
clubs
fix
are
this.
limited use facilities, usually nonprofit, and they're designed to meet the needs and desires of restricted membership. And these can be very, very exclusive in some cases. We're gonna have, hopefully, Tim Hires come and visit with us later this semester. He's down at Old Collier in Naples. You get into some of the courses down in Naples, there can be some very, very exclusive golf courses. Golf courses where you have to be a member somewhere else before you can be a member there. And that type of exclusivity comes with its price and its benefits. You know, these golf courses they usually have very few rounds, but they might have a staff of 30 or 40 people. And they're able to maintain these meticulous conditions. You know, then you take a golf course like West End, you know, that has a budget of $200,000 and 3 guys that take care of it. Or Meadowbrook, what was the staff in Meadowbrook?
When I was there was 2 full-time employees. The superintendent and the mechanic.
And then the rest of it
everybody
was-
else was part-time. Yeah.
And John, you work down, which course is it?
Gainesville
Gainesville Country Club?
Yeah, we only had, about 12 people on main staff.
Yeah. So much smaller than what some of these resort courses can have. in
UF's
terms of-
only got
Yeah.
11 full-time employees.
On a
now.
good day, they got like 15.
That's a UF course?
Yeah, I think there's 11.
Because they've got
That's not
a
full time.
dozen of you guys out there working so that you can play for free.
Not anymore. There's
Yeah,
only
they
like-
charge you now if you want to bring somebody too.
Well, they always
Yeah.
charge to, well, card fee.
Cart fee.
Well, they charge people $18 now,
The
even if they walk.
semi-private clubs, they're kind of a hybrid between the daily fee and the private clubs, where there's some private membership and then they allow some people to come in and play. Within each of those organizations, there's gonna be an organizational structure, often that reflects something like this, where you can have a board of directors, and then a green committee, different committees that represent the greens or the turf part of it, the golf or pro shop, and then the clubhouse. And under that, then it's going to be whoever needs to answer those committees. Now, these can make or break the relationship of a superintendent with their prospective green committee can make or break your success in long-term employment opportunities. And because there's been plenty of individuals who, for any number of reasons, often with no fault of their own, who have lost their jobs because of basically differing of opinions with the green committee. And what often happens is that these greens committees will rotate people. If it's a private club, they'll rotate people in and off of these committees. And someone will come in, often these are lawyers or doctors or other people who have a lot of income and are used to having people just do what they say. And they'll come in with an idea that they want to have the golf course look a certain way, or that they need to put in, they need to change the greens out from, Bermuda to Caribbean bentgrass, because Caribbean bentgrass is a far superior putting surface. Never mind the fact that you're in Florida and the Caribbean can't survive the summer. Those types of situations, that being just an example, but they'll come in and put expectations on the superintendent. The superintendent has either the choice to comply or fight it. If they comply and they know that it's going to fail and then it fails, they're going to lose their job. And if they fight it, they're probably going to lose their job. You know, it's a very touchy situation, and it's really important that those of you going into the industry, if you have a committee that you're going to be answering to, that you be very, very careful with your communication, both of what you do, how you do it, so that they're informed about the practices that are going on. They know that if you're going to be airifying the greens, why are you airifying the greens? Because there's a good chance they have no idea that there's an actual good reason for that to happen. Often, and I've seen some superintendents do a really good job by creating a blog, essentially, that they use to basically do almost a daily update on what's going on the golf course. And that blog is then something that the membership or the committees can follow and keep updated with, you know, the different maintenance practices that are happening, all with the goals that they come in informed. They don't walk onto the course to, you know, with their buddy that they're going to come play with and be surprised that the greens have just been airified. Even though it probably came out in the newsletter, it was mentioned at the last board meeting and whatever else, you know, the more you can communicate with your membership or the people who are going to be basically deciding your fate, the better.
Is there always a green committee, or is that on?
No, that's one type of structure. Another one, you know, would have something similar to this, where you've got important directors, a series of committees, and then a general manager that you would end up answering to.
Hale worked at a place where they had like all sorts of stuff going on, and a bunch of different
At Hale?
No.
I was down in Naples this summer.
Naples, yeah.
They
Had
said
Benito
there
Bay
was-
Club with
Yeah.
Hal.
Yeah, the Benito Bay Club has been sold
Yeah.
and changed ownership a couple times, and I'm sure it's probably a mess from the ownership. And there's what, 3 courses, 5 courses, 5 courses? In a facility like that,
The hierarchy.
yeah, as you add golf courses and you add more management than that changes even more.
Right.
You know, in Caleb's example with Benita Bay Group, Hal Akins is the director of golf down there, and then he has a series of assistants and second assistants underneath him, and you know, it all trickles down. It seems in my interaction with Hal, and it's been a little while since I've talked to him, but you know, in his case, at that golf course, the management often falls to the assistants and second assistants that are at the golf course, and Hal doesn't have a lot of hands-on at the individual golf course level with those 5 golf courses. His management is more overall budget and equipment and overhead, and you know, making sure that the facilities are kept up and that sort of thing. But it's going to vary. It'll vary. Every course that you step onto will have something that's a little bit different and a different political system that you need to learn to navigate. Kick back into this. Anyways, any questions about stuff so far? I am going to ask you guys to do me a favor. So the course website, Sakai, it's partially up, and what I've been trying to do is I don't have the benefit of a course designer from the CITT this semester to help make it pretty like I did last semester. And it's ended up being a little bit of work trying to get it all finalized. It's partially up. I'll get the handouts posted under the module. I'll get the syllabus up there. In the discussion groups, what I would like to have each of you do is just put up a post. If you don't mind including a headshot of you, so a picture of you, and it's just, I'll put some instructions on there, but basically just a real brief summary and introduction of yourself to the class. The other thing that you're going to have to do, or I'll ask you to do, there's a introductory quiz, basically a Sakai, learning Sakai quiz, and a syllabus quiz that will be posted for you to take, that just shows that you are aware of the syllabus, that you've had a chance to read it, and that you are able to navigate the quiz or assessment part of the Sakai website, because that's where we'll have those weekly quizzes. The quizzes will be posted on Fridays, and you'll have, essentially, what I'll probably do is give you basically, give you a 24-hour period to take them, and that way they're up from basically midnight to midnight, something like that. Please work on your own on the quizzes. That's important to me. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. I don't expect the quizzes to be horribly difficult, more just you keeping up with stuff. What I would like also, as a favor, I'm going to post a couple of different things. One of them is going to be this Google Hangout video, which when I finish this up, it's going to actually get loaded automatically to YouTube. I'm going to post a link to that, and then I'm going to process and post the video that I've been shooting at the back of the room here. And I want your honest opinion in critiquing those as an option for the course being received by you, if you need to catch up on material, or someone who's off campus. Is it going to work? One thing, I'll give you a little, I guess, caveat to it. The audio, I'm not sure how well that's going to pick up my audio right now, but I do have a lavalier mic that will make that audio on the video from the back of the room better. It may be a little scratchy on this because it's picking it up from the cameras. So the audio will be better on that if we go that way. But just, you don't need to watch the entire lecture again, of course, but to go in and just give a little, just to look at it and see from your perspective, would it be, the Google Hangout thing, would that be acceptable, or would it drive me nuts? Because it's going to be blurry.
That's separate on Google Hangout now?
That will be posted, I'll probably post it to YouTube also, but that's gonna, I have to take that and download it, post-process it, and post it back up.
Alright, so you want us to go into sessions, specific, intro, ourselves?
Yeah, and then I'll put these up and ask you to look at them. But that's just more of a participation thing and to help me make sure that it's good. All right. Anything else?
Do we need the textbook for this class?
There's all optional. All those were optional. I'm not going to test from any textbook. The list of textbooks were there only for you if you wanted to kind of get a heads up on text that might be of interest. Okay? I have several of them if you want to look at them.
And you are teaching the etiquette.
The professional development class tomorrow? Yes.
I'm not going to, I have to be in class in 20 seconds.
Let us know tomorrow. And attendance is kept in that class.
Right, that's
It's
right.
important to
It's
just.
the only one I'm probably on that.
Let us know.
That's, I gotta write down.
If any of you are looking for a fun one-credit class, the ORH4223 is a professional development class. You're getting junior, senior level, getting close to graduating, and are not taking it. It's one credit, and we bring in a lot of people from industry and elsewhere to talk to you guys and help you get kind of get a heads up on entering the job market. So, thanks, everybody. Want to visit for a little bit?
Yes, sir.